Welcome to our third Business Leadership Speakers talk of spring of 2025, and this will be the last one. Finals are upon us within a few weeks, so we're mindful of that. My name is Patrick Jones, and I run the Institute for Public Policy and Economics here at Eastern, and on behalf of that institute and the School of Business, we want to welcome you all. We're pretty proud of the quality of the speakers that we bring to these events, and I think tonight will be no exception. This is largely an Eastern event, but we do want to acknowledge that we have support from a pillar of the community, the Washington Trust Bank. Is there anybody from the bank here that we could honor? Well, if not, can we give a round of applause in absentia? Steve, you're off the hook. No audit committee, no audit department here to check your work. So a few of you have heard me say this before, but I'm going to say it again for those of you who haven't been here. Really, we have two or three goals of these talks. And the first is to listen and learn from a successful Spokane business person of what they do and how they got there, because the stories of how they got there are probably just as important, if not more important, and more interesting than what they do. We also want you to be inspired by what you hear today, and I think the talk we're going to have tonight is no exception to that. These are pretty extraordinary stories of business lives in our community. And then finally, we want you to have fun. We want you to mingle, we want you to get to know each other, and we have a lot of time for that. So the format tonight is three parts. We're going to have our speaker hold forth for 30 minutes, and we're also reserving another 30 minutes for Q&A, and we hope that that Q&A will be an opportunity for you to raise your hands and ask our speakers some tough questions. That Q&A will be moderated by Professor Bill Shaw. There he is, Professor Bill Shaw of Accounting, and he'll make sure that you have an opportunity at the mic. And then, like I said, the last piece is going to be food and drink and mingle. So here we go. But before we go, I'd like to bring up our Dean of the College of Professional Programs, Dr. Osman Özturgut. So would Dean Özturgut come on up here and say a few words, and we got a little surprise.
Thank you so much. And thank you all for being here. I'm the newer Dean for the College of Professional Programs, and the College of Professional Programs at Eastern includes School of Business, School of Accounting, School of Education, School of Psychology, School of Social Work, and School of Libraries. So, and I'm really excited to be invited to be part of this experience with our exceptional school, one of our exceptional schools, the School of Business, a collaboration with Institute for Public Policy and Economic Analysis led by Dr. Patrick Jones. So I'm really excited about this event. And as Regents Polytechnic, it is so important for us to be connected to our communities, our industries, and to learn and to create these experiences for our students. So being part of these, we want to make sure that our students are well prepared for the workforce and what is waiting for them. And these real life experiences really make a big difference. So we're very excited, and thank you, our speaker as well, Steve, for being here and helping and connecting with us and with our faculty and staff. And then again, this is a collaborative event with our School of Business and Institute of Public Policy, and we're grateful for all the work that they do in making such events happen for our students. So it's so crucial. So we're happy to be part of it. And transitioning from that conversation, again, we have, as I mentioned, all across the university at Eastern Washington University, we have exceptional faculty members that lead our academic affairs. And they're involved in teaching, they're involved in service, and they're involved in research. And today we want to recognize two of our exceptional faculty members from School of Business. And they were voted by their peers, and we wanted to make sure that we recognize them at this event and give them a little certificate as well to honor them. So our first award is in Excellence in Teaching. The Schools of Business and Professional Accounting presents Excellence in Teaching Award for 24-25 to Dr. William Shaw. Please. And again, teaching is as important as research for us because our teaching informs our research informs our teachers. So the more research we're involved in, the better teachers that we become. The more we teach, the better researchers we become. So our second award, again, these are all voted by their peers in their respective schools. The School of Business and Professional Accounting presents an Excellence in Research Award for 24-25 to Dr. Rajiv Dwivedi. Please, Dr. Rajiv. And thank you all for being here again. I'll turn it over to Dr. Jones. Thank you.
All right. Well, I get the honor of introducing our speaker. First of all, our speaker is a Spokane boy who came back to town and has, over the years, enjoyed a really long, illustrious career in finance. I was going to give you a kind of a roadmap of all the different companies Steve Helmbrecht has been an executive at, but then I saw his slides, so I don't want to steal his thunder. So he's going to talk a bit about that. So I'm going to keep it real brief about Steve Helmbrecht. He holds a degree, undergraduate degree in accounting from the Foster School of Business at the University of Washington, and a master's degree in taxation from the University of Denver. He started his career in Seattle and then moved to London fairly quickly, where he opened up an office for a company, which I think we'll talk about. I've known Steve from board work, and Steve continues to be very active civically. At the moment, he's on the board of directors of Washington Trust Bank, and I think it's the Board of Regents, is that it, at Gonzaga University. Steve is married to Teresa, and they have 2 children. Lauren, a daughter who's about ready to return to Spokane after a few years away, and Brett, who lives in Bend. So Steve, with that introduction to you and your family, come on up and tell us about what you've been doing over the last few years. Welcome, Steve Helmbrecht.
Thank you. Thank you, Patrick. I really appreciate the School of Business and the Institute for this opportunity to be here this evening. Last month, I was here for Michelle Heggie's presentation and watched Gordon Hester's as well the month before. Again, really appreciate, as I was leaving to come over here from the Wonder Building where we have our office, my 2 colleagues simultaneously said, "Go Eags," because my co-founder and the other individual are both proud graduates. And in fact, we have 5 Eagle graduates, EWU graduates on the team at Treasury4, and that's number 1. That's top of the ranks. So appreciate that. So I'd like to just share a little bit of my background and then talk about the company. And it's great to see all of you out there, and I know there's students, so I've oriented some of my thoughts and just comments in terms of advice or perspectives that I hope will be beneficial as well. I'll talk a little bit about experience and then the Treasury4 story, and even before that, what is Treasury? Where does that fit within the office of the CFO and finance? And then innovations, what's going on in fintech, financial technology, and the short answer is changing rapidly. There's a lot going on in that area. And then some thoughts and advice, and then really looking forward to the Q&A as well. I am with Treasury4. I was one of the co-founders of the company. We started it, and I'll tell more of the origin story, in 2020. Didn't really start to operationalize until 2021, so about 4 years ago. And prior to that, was the president and CEO of Lakeside Companies, which is a private capital company here in the Spokane and Coeur d'Alene area, founded by John Hemmingson. And I'll talk more about my time at Itron, 12 years, 10 of which I was the CFO. And Itron is based in Liberty Lake, publicly traded company, one of the largest here in the area, and served in that role again for about a decade. And I only added the CFO of the year because for those of you who remember what was going on in 2009 with the markets crashing and all that, I like to say that I thought I was applying for the stressed out CFO of the year award. So I thought I was duly qualified, but there was a lot going on back then and with the bank. I want to first just give a little bit of background. As Patrick said, I grew up in Spokane, born here, moved around a bit, but graduated and then moved to Seattle and UW. And I really wanted my career to be, and I thought I was going to be in public accounting. So I got a degree in accounting. I took and passed the CPA exam. And I went to work for one of what was then known as the Big Eight firms, and with a real sense that I wanted to have a career in taxation. And I started in that role and did that for 3 years, and then I had an opportunity to go get a master's degree in taxation. But as I'll talk about, I actually veered off and got into technology and other areas, but working with entrepreneurs. And the reason I show this winding path is that I really believe that one's careers not always a straight line and something you're going to see, that it oftentimes only makes sense in arrears, and that you can look back and a lot of what you do makes a lot of sense when you look back and how you can combine and draw from those experiences and pull those together, and certainly in my case. And the reason I share that a lot is that if that's true, then at the beginning of that journey, the answer to a lot of questions is, I don't know. And the reason I share that to students out there is I don't know is an unsettling answer at times, particularly for your parents. But it's an okay answer, because if you're willing to embrace a future that's full of options and change, I don't know should be the answer, because you have to be open to it. And again, one's journey isn't always set early on, and I'm glad for that. Even starting a company later on was something I didn't know I was going to do. So my point is to embrace that journey academically and now professionally as you move forward in your careers, because that's the opportunity, and can look like a winding path, but often you'll draw on that later. So as I mentioned, I was in graduate school. I thought I was going to go back, and I got approached by someone an entrepreneur, named Dwayne Castles, and he had started a small company. He was a municipal bond trader. He had a lot of success, and he decided to go out and start a company that was going to be fixed income investment management, was looking for someone with a tax background. So I joined, rather than going back into public accounting after I graduated. I went to work in Seattle with Dwayne as the second employee, and we started to build this company that was focusing on investment management. And later, that company got sold to a Canadian life company and was quite successful. While we were there, I started to use, we needed a software system that would help us handle complex fixed income securities, and that was bonds and mortgage-backed securities and mostly municipals. And we did that, and we needed to find a system, and there was a small company in Connecticut called SS&C, and we purchased the system. And ultimately, after I left Prime Advisors, I joined SS&C, and it was a company that was founded by Bill Stone, and I joined in 1993. And after the company went public in 1996, Bill, in his way, and very direct, said, how'd you like to move to London? And Lauren, our daughter, was not even 1 yet, and my wife Teresa and I said, yes, let's go for it. So I went from not having a passport to moving to London to having to fill the page, or get a replacement passport in like 6 months. We opened up operations in Amsterdam and Kuala Lumpur and Singapore and Tokyo and Sydney. And it was an amazing experience. And today, SS&C, after going private and then back to public again, is a $5+ billion revenue, 19 billion market cap company with 27,000 employees. And I was, had the privilege of probably being employee 100 or less than that early on. And then I moved to Spokane. I recruited by Fred Brown, and that's where in 2000, where I got, knowing that I was leaving London, coming back to Seattle, said, would you ever consider moving back to Spokane? And I thought, well, I hadn't thought about it, but I'll come over and look. And my mom started to tear up when she thought that the kids would be there, so that kind of closed the deal. But actually, having left London, we moved to Spokane. And that was founded by Fred Brown. And we raised venture capital funding. At the time, in 2000, that was the most raised in a VC round ever. And the company was then acquired by Itron. And that's part of my Itron story. And so that is what that's what led me ultimately to Itron. And so interestingly, I worked with with and for three different entrepreneurs who didn't know each other. But in looking back, I've asked, like, what were there any common traits that maybe connected them that I found? And there were. They all started companies when they were in their late 20s or early 30s, and they began their careers with traditional companies. They didn't intend to be entrepreneurs, but they discovered an idea or a concept of PC-based investment software, which is what SS&C does, or investment management or line design software, and innovation. And they had this idea and this thought that this could really make a difference. And they took that idea to their then company or employer. And the company, whoever that was, or the people there, looked at it and thought about it and thought, we're not going to do that. No, we're not. And I say often that's the moment of truth. You go soaking back to your cubicle and say, well, they're not going to do it. Or do you have enough passion in your idea that you're willing to walk away from a salary and start something with nothing and do that? And that's what they did. They had the courage, let's say, to go out on their own and bootstrap, raise capital, use their own capital, and really do it not because it was for the exit, it was for the dream, to do something different, to do something better, to innovate. And some of the other common traits that I've seen is that they had this intuition. This is where I think things are going, but you can't just be intuitive if you're not willing to take action. You have to have a bias to action. You got to do something, and that may mean some missteps or you redirect, but you have to have that bias to action. And you have to conceive an idea or a void and then find ways to serve that. And I think that's true. In fintech, a lot of what drives newer companies is practitioners who have an innovative way to disrupt longstanding business practices with new technology. So you got to think about, well, what if we did that differently? And that practitioner experience can often be helpful. You got to focus on your early customers, particularly early adopters, because they too are taking risk. And then have a strong vision for the future with the courage to overcome competition, because you're small, they're small. Lack of resources, lack of the personnel to make a profit. And then I use the term too, being adaptable yet set on a course. And what I mean by that, and I'm not a sailor, but if you're a sailor, you know where you're going, you're still going to adapt to wind conditions. Or if you're a hiker, you know where you're going to go, you have to move around obstacles. So you have to be both set on where you want to go, but adaptable in how you want to get there. That's not chaos. Chaos is not knowing where you want to go. But adaptability is trying to figure out how you want to get to where you want to go. And then being passionate about ideas and then having really almost a sense of charisma about that. So that's really what I had the opportunity to do. And so I had that history and opportunity and then joined Itron. So I left kind of the entrepreneurial world to Itron in 2002, and then and became the VP of International. And a couple years later, our CEO, Leroy Nussbaum, talked about where he wanted to take the company and asked me to take the position as a CFO. And I said that, I had the international experience. Now I'm drawing on experience. I had fixed income and securities and things, but I hadn't come up through the traditional accounting path of controllership. And briefly, when you think about the office of the CFO, it's really around your transactional accounting, accounts receivable, accounts payable, payroll, financial accounting, financial reporting. You also have you have tax, you have investor relations, you can have internal audit depending upon your size. And then there's also this small group called Treasury, which I'll talk about, which is managing all the cash. So I took that position and started at Itron, and The Linesoft acquisition was the first of 9 acquisitions over 5 years for $2 billion. When I started as a CFO, we were 250, 300 million in revenue, and over that period grew to 2.4 billion. And we did 9 acquisitions over 5 years for $2 billion, and the last and largest added $1 billion in revenue and 5,000 employees, 60 locations in 30 countries. And Leroy Nussbaum, who's Hall of Fame CEO and should be an amazing leader, said to the group, including me, go figure it out. And he meant it, like, go figure it out. We've acquired a company larger than we were. And so we had to figure it out. So for me, it was build a team, bring in people who are very talented, and build the team we had. So it was both recruitment, but also promotion and giving people opportunities, rolling out an Oracle system worldwide and doing many things. But that's where I discovered the need and the importance of treasury, because now you start to have many legal entities, many banks and bank accounts, foreign currencies, not just the dollar, but the euro, the pound, the Hungarian forint, the Argentinian peso, et cetera, around the world. And how do you manage all of that? So it was a great learning experience. And so one of the individuals we recruited, Ed Berry, worked at Microsoft, another Spokane native, and was able to recruit him from the Microsoft team to join Treasury4, and along with Nathan Brown, another co-founder, and a very talented team in that area. And when I left Itron, Ed went on to become the first and only treasurer of Tableau Software in Seattle, which is a very large visualization company. And so Tableau got acquired, and Ed and I stayed connected, but he always had this vision about wanting to start his own company. And and Tableau got acquired by Salesforce right before COVID in 2019. And I always remember he wanted to meet and came to my house and told the story about, this vision about, I want to build the kind of tools I wish we had when we were practitioners. And I said, and you want to do it here, don't you, in Spokane? He said, yes. And so I remember we were talking to each other, and I asked him, and I think this is important, I said, what are you looking most for in a partner or, someone to work with? And he said, someone I can trust. And I said, okay, we got that covered. We worked together for all those years, and that's a really core element. So we decided to do that. So full circle, became an entrepreneur and Ed. And I mentioned those early traits that are together, that are common that I've seen. I think a lot of those are true for us, but except one big difference. They were in their 20s, we were in our 50s. So my message to anyone out there is you can be an entrepreneur at any age if you spot the ideas and do that. And I really believe the opportunities are quite large for that. Our mission is to help companies unlock the power of their treasury data. And we use a small t because it is cash and financial, but there's many more powerful elements of what makes up treasury. And so what we're building is a treasury management system suite, or a TMS. And we started with legal entities and accounts because that's the foundation of any organization. And we're business to business, or B2B, not B2C fintech, business to consumer. And B2B is more complicated because corporates have to deal with a lot more, it's a lot harder to open a bank account and set that up as a corporate. You have to get permissions and many other things than an individual. It's far easier to open up a financial account today. You can do it on your phone right now. But in the corporate world, it's a lot different. And so we built the foundation of entity management, and now we're moving into cash, bringing in bank and financial information. And then we've recently released a payments module for outbound wire, ACH, and other forms of domestic and foreign outbound. And then over time, we'll continue to build a roadmap towards debt, which would be third-party debt, issuing debt, or your intercompany debt, which is how you move money between subsidiaries, particularly global companies, and then ultimately foreign exchange for exposure, because again, global companies, not all, but those globally face a kind of exposures, what's called to different changes in foreign currency rates that we faced at Itron and elsewhere. And so that's what we are building, and we're doing that right here in Spokane. We're headquartered here, we're in the Wonder Building, predominantly based here, although we do have remote employees in sales and other areas. And so we're building out now an Entity 4 module, as I mentioned, is to really help handle financial account management. And a lot of what we're doing is visualization. because visualization of data is really a critical element. So it's the ability, in the upper left, to build organizational charts. How is the organization structured? And many companies struggle with having a 360-degree view of themselves. They're maintained on spreadsheets or Visio diagrams, not in a way that is maintained in a current manner. And that is, we've discovered, again, innovation about if you can provide this, that can help you. And then how cash moves. What is the relationship between all the bank accounts? How does money move and where? And then other forms of who are the signatories on bank accounts? What if somebody leaves? You have to notify the bank and make sure that you do that. So it's a lot more strict than it is, again, on the consumer side. And then our cash, as I mentioned, is really helping to increase visibility into cash and cash positions and transactions and to tell the story more importantly. Why this is all important is a couple things. One, and why Treasury is becoming more important is that cash has become an earning asset class again. For over a decade, when the Federal Reserve had rates at nearly zero, the return on cash was nearly zero. If you had excess very short-term cash investments, you might earn 0.1%, 0.2%. There just wasn't much happening. As the Fed started to raise rates, money market rates started to go to 5%. Now they're back in the 4s. But that's a very big difference, in terms of going from 1,000 per million to 40 or 50,000. It's just an enormous growth in the asset class of cash and being able to earn interest. But the other thing, that's the balance of cash. Cash is moving faster, more electronically. You have what are called real-time payments. You have the move towards, many of us all do that, and how quickly you can move money electronically. Because it's not moving physically. We're moving away from checks. We're moving towards wire and ACH and the use of credit cards and processing through card and merchant processing. All of that affects the electronic movement of cash, and it is both a challenge and an opportunity for companies to be able to better understand that. But you have to have the right technology to be able to do that, and that's what we focus on. AI. How do we use AI? So we'll talk more about that, but AI is real. I was just at a conference in San Francisco last week for Treasury. It's real, but it's still trying to be discovered in what ways will it affect. And so what we are seeing is the use of AI to better analyze data, to take information and turn it into natural language. Like, what are you seeing here? Where's the cash sitting? What's there? Or querying the data. Could you tell me are there any employees who left the company or still signatory on bank accounts? Because then you can start to use that information, or often for predictive forecasting, taking historical information and saying, this is the pattern of what the cash flow has been looking like in certain accounts. What does that tell us what might happen going forward, in using that for forecasting? So it can be used to analyze data, and it also can be used just to build visualization. So this actually is one that says, could you create a report that tells, I could send the CFO that's showing what the major movements of cash are in certain bank accounts, and to start to kick out that. And these are AI-enabled tools that are out there. So again, for the students, I would say particularly for everybody, is that, this is an opinion, that it will change roles and functions. And a lot of the functions within finance are going to have the tools to help you automate it. But I also add that it's going to make your role as a financial professional more critical, because there will be a lot more responsibility that you'll have in utilizing the tools to help you be more productive. And so that's our view about it, is adopting the technologies. We are using it to help develop code more quickly, or for QA, quality assurance, or other areas. So it is real. Our focus has been we'll work with a range of different companies, but our primary focus is on growth technology companies. And so Twilio is, for example, publicly traded. So these are the kind of companies that have selected us. And the reason why is often they're younger, they're newer, they don't have legacy systems, and they recognize the importance of data. last week, as I mentioned, in San Francisco, at this large Treasury conference, one of our newest customers, the Treasury manager, or Director of Treasury, excuse me, shared with his audience there, and I was in the audience, that they recently selected Treasury4 as their treasury management system, and that company is OpenAI. So we understand the importance of technology with growth companies, and we really are aiming to do that. And again, from the Spokane perspective, our goal, and it's an aspiration too, is to build a world-class software here in Spokane, because it can be done. So some thoughts and advice. First of all, being in entrepreneurial it's like, what's the difference between being a public company and an entrepreneurial company? A couple things. Being in a large public company, I use the word relentless more as an adjective, because it's relentless work and pressure and deadlines, and you can't skip a quarter, and you have investors, and the market's trading every day. And so I didn't mind that, but it's very different to be in a larger public company and also we have more resources and more people. In a smaller company, in a startup, it is just a lot of work and you don't have the resources to do that. And so I remember my wife coming home one day and I said, Teresa, I was the CFO of a publicly traded company with $2 billion revenue and did all this, and today I got QuickBooks to balance. So it's just, you have to do the work yourself, and we were a small team, and that's probably the big difference is rolling up your sleeves and working as a team, and we're very flat in how we approach the things that we do. So I focus on leading teams just based on some key principles: professionalism, quality, transparency. I really encourage authentic teamwork, where it's okay to debate what's best for the organization or the company, as long as that's what you're debating. You're gonna have different perspectives about what's best, but do that and then come to decisions and move forward. And then I really do enjoy helping people grow professionally, because that's just paying forward what others have done for me and what you'll do for others. I get asked a lot, what do you look for when you're recruiting? These are the fundamentals, and I haven't changed this in 20 years. Smart, hardworking people who care. And smart isn't GPA per se, it's more of an attitude. It is an ability to learn and capture complexity, but it's also emotional intelligence and a willingness to learn and be open-minded. That's my definition of smart. Hardworking isn't the hours you put in, it's an attitude. Can I help? How can I do that? Let's do that, work together. That's hard work. And care, I always say, care about your customer, care about your colleagues, care about the mission of what you're doing. And it's okay to be ambitious. That's true too, and care about yourself. But if you do those things, that'll take care of itself. So really focusing on that, and have that opportunity to really to build on that. And so what I want to kind of close out with is some advice, is that, and again, more the students, but everybody, show dedication and enthusiasm. Not faults in either case, but that's what I really look for in an organization, particularly, whether it was a large company or small, your role, be good at that, be dedicated to that, but also a good team player as well. And have pride of ownership in your work. And again, not only debate what's best for the organization and work through that, but also make those kinds of decisions as well, because there's not always a right or wrong answer. And then don't be afraid to ask for help. And what I mean by that, again, is as students, is that it's okay to ask, well, could you help me? Or maybe is there someone that I could work with? And the answer may be no, but that's likely the worst case scenario is no. You're not going to get yelled at because you ask for help, so be willing to ask for it. You'd be amazed at how people will say yes to a lot of things. One interviewing tip, use first names, because if I were in an interview right now and having a conversation, I had a question and said, Patrick, that's a really good question. Here's what I think there. I'm probably, based on interviewing hundreds, if not thousands, you're already in like 20% or 30% who just use a name. And not in a false way or anything, but just make a connection with somebody else and use names. That also works in sales. It also just works in interactions. And then probably above all, be a great listener. And so what I mean by that is that, and I share this as a way to think about it, is that you should make it your goal. And I remember this conversation with somebody about this. We gave this advice to somebody else. You should make it your goal that when you're in a meeting with a group of people and you walk out, the rest of the people look around at each other and say, you know what? That person was the best listener in the room. That person was the best listener in the room. And it's like, well, then what does that mean? And for shy individuals, that doesn't mean you can't say anything. That's the best you heard. What does it mean to be the best listener in the room? And my definition, my opinion is to ask high quality questions you really want to know the answer to, and you remember what the answers were. So that later when I'm meeting with Bill and Bill's talking, so it's interesting because when I spoke with Patrick earlier today, he mentioned something. I guarantee you Bill's going to say, wow, that person listened. And listening doesn't mean you have to agree with what you're listening to, but we all want to be heard. And it's just basic advice, but it's really important in general, but I think in finance, that's really important to be open-minded, to be a good listener. And finally, be trustworthy. Just from last week, this quote, "The speed of money is accelerating. What's the speed of trust?" And the interesting thing about trust is that, is this, and I use this analogy a lot, is that if someone were to tell you that they were a really good golfer, like you just have to go play one hole to find out if that's true or not. Or if they tell you they're like, I'm a concert pianist or jazz pianist, like great, there it is, just prove it. How long would it take to know whether they're telling the truth there? Or I'm going to run Bloomsday in under an hour. It's like, okay, let's go for a 1 mile run. You're going to know. But if someone tells you they're trustworthy, what's the insta test? And it's harder. And the reason why that's important is that trust is the essence of finance, but also with the velocity and movement of money, we're all worried about the lack of trust. Why do we have multi-factor authentication and all? Why are we worried about the negatives of AI? It's because people are trying to take advantage of trust. And so I don't have an easy answer for that in terms of the macro, because that's hard to control. But what you can control is yourself and be trustworthy. Truthfulness, honesty, integrity, respect for others, fairness, I think that applies really in life, but applies especially in business and even more so in the finance area. That's the essence, is being trustworthy. And finally, the reason I share that is I actually believe that being trustworthy is the best way, is the most effective way to save time. So it's not only the right thing to do, it's my best time-saving advice is be trustworthy. And I always say, just ask someone who lies on their resume, how's it working for you? Or if your auditors don't believe you or trust you, they're going to do extra work to validate what you said. So it's not only the right thing to do, but it's also something that will help you be very effective and efficient in what you're doing, particularly, again, in finance areas. So with that, thank you, and appreciate it.
Bill, do you want to come on up? That was a lot to chew on. Thank you, Steve. That was a rich talk. And let's see if we can unpack some of those remarks with, first of all, Dr. Shaw's questions, and then he's going to turn it over to you, and you get to ask the same kind of questions. So,
thank you.
Take it away, Bill.
Check here. Yep. Well, thank you, Steve. That was certainly wonderful. I had some prepared questions, but as I watched that, I had a different question come to mind right away. In the middle of that, you talked about cash, and kind of cash tells a story. What do you mean by that?
We slightly prepped, so here goes. That. Okay, so watch this.
State Ethics Board incoming, but yes.
What just happened? Right. That's only half the story, right? Why? Why did I do that? Did I lend him money? Did I just pay back a loan? Was that an interest payment? Did I purchase a service? Did I purchase a product? Was that a deposit? Was that a refund? It only tells half the story. You need to know the why behind the movement. And so even from an accounting perspective, those of you, your double entry accounting, I just credited cash. I don't know what to debit yet because you need to know the why. But the reason I share that is that you hardly see this physical movement of cash, but now it's the electronic movement of cash. every time funds are moving, there's a why. Even personally, if you're Venmoing something to someone else, there's a reason why. It may be a gift, it may be whatever it is, but there's got to be a reason why, and cash tells a story. But again, if you think about that in terms of velocity and all, is understanding what that looks like. And so I really, I only use that to illustrate that the volumes of the movement, particularly in the corporate world, and that's the world we focus on, is just, when you have tens of millions of customers paying by credit card across different platforms and the movement globally, that's really the complexity of moving of cash. But it's the finance organization has to manage that and really understand it.
Wonderful. Students and people in the community, or community members out there, please get ready with your questions as well. So I'll follow that with, what are some of the most exciting or promising fintech innovations you're currently seeing?
I think it's across almost all categories of real estate, property tech. I think in the consumer, I mean, both business side, but I think the business to consumer side, just all the innovations with new forms of payments and the use of technology and how rapidly those are being deployed, I think are really exciting. I think getting back to AI is a lot of innovations in fraud detection and being able to try to prevent the types of bad things that are happening is getting ahead of that. So I think those innovations are really critical as well on the fintech side.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other place I had to go was AI. And with the rise of that and the machine learning, how do you see these technologies shaping the future of the financial services?
I think that it's going to continue to help or drive better analytics and better understanding of data in general across not just Treasury, but across the board. And I also think it will drive just more efficiency. It's better understanding. We have certain customers already who in the finance are talking about how they're using AI to make themselves more productive. They have their closed internal system and they land their own presentations, and they have to do like a justification document, and they know what that format looks like. So when they get a new request, they just place it in and let ChatGPT help them get that done a lot more quickly. And someone told me the other day he knows what his boss likes or doesn't like, and so he inserts information like that in as well because it just helps to shape more quickly. So I think a lot of it's around time savings.
Do we have any audience questions yet?
You quickly mentioned mentors. In your career, have you found that mentors find you or that you found your mentors?
Boy, that's a great question. I'd say a little bit of both. In taking interest, a connection. I haven't had as many where it was just I identified somebody that I didn't prior know and reached out to them. But that's certainly possible. Getting back to asking. I think my experience has been more around beginning to develop a relationship where the insights, the perspective, feeling like I was being heard and then challenging, in the right ways. It's been that form of mentorship that's come through relationships and then sticking with that over time. I'm really glad you asked that question too, because I just think the value of mentors is immense.
We had one down here.
Hi, Steve. In your experience, what is the one most, if you had to pick one, most important attribute to be successful as an entrepreneur?
Oh boy, that's a really good question. I think it's that the coming into it with a perspective or a vision that is grounded in that there's something could come out of that, and like building everything around. You have to have all the other things, but the one single thing would be, I think, to have spotted an opportunity or a vision for those who I've had the pleasure of knowing, and then the willingness to go all in to that vision and do that. And it's not always guaranteed that will be successful, but I think that's what I've seen as a common trait, is strength of vision, spotting an opportunity, and then going all in towards that. And I've been sticking with it.
Great, thank you. Oh, also, Do you know who said if you don't know where you're going, you might end up someplace else?
I don't know who said that, but it's, no, I don't.
You talked about chaos, not knowing where you're going. Yogi Berra said that.
Oh, that's good.
He also said, if you don't go to other people's funerals, they won't go to yours. So,
That's good.
thank you, Steve. Good presentation.
Hi there. I'm a professional freelance copywriter in the financial space, and I know you have a sales team, but I'm just wondering, what types of marketing collateral have you found to work best for you guys to gain new clients?
That's a great question on marketing collateral. We now have a demand generation group in marketing that's material. Is to have that's a great question. Is to have to provide insights from Ed, my co-founder, and others who have treasury background with a point of view. People will read that. They're interested in understanding what maybe some of the challenges are out there, how to think about that. So it's having content, whether that's video or print, digital, that is focusing on topics or challenges or problems or issues that are germane or relevant to in our case a treasurer or financial professionals. Just yesterday, a lead said, your webinars are just really good. Like it feels like obviously you're practitioners, and once we've received that feedback, sometimes is it clear that your system's being developed by practitioners because you speak our language. So I think if we can do in any area to be able to connect with the potential audience through storytelling and providing examples, I think has been the best way for us.
Awesome, thanks.
Steve, you could have your business anywhere in the United States. Why do you choose Eastern Washington?
We live here, and that was the starting point. And I would say that was building on Itron's success. And there are a lot of great companies that are based here. I feel like there are a couple reasons. One is, geographically, but also just the talent here. And I also think it's the mindset. Our first value is trust, and second is customer success. And I just think a lot of people here are wired towards that. Another is humility, and which I define, and I can't take credit for this, is that humility is not thinking less of yourself. Humility is thinking of yourself less. You just make it more about others. So I just think there's an element of that. People talk about, I can share this about Spokane. It's not being nice as much as being like willing to help, open-minded, wanting to learn, and I've had that coming from others as well. So I think those are some of the key reasons why we're here and why that's contributing to our success.
Great. And a follow-on to that, the business ecosystem, taking into consideration taxation in Washington and everything. What is your opinion on that? Is Washington a business-friendly state, or?
I think that there's certainly tech is strong here. So I'd say generally there's a desire to see technology across the state overall, and being at the state level, being supportive or wanting to drive technology. But some of the, it's challenging. Some of that, we haven't really faced a lot of that in terms of like purely taxation because we're a startup and all. But those are headwinds, I would say, somewhat there. But I think bigger picture, Washington, relative to being a tech company, is very understanding of the criticality of that industry to the state's success. So I think generally is in favor of supporting that, even though there are some headwinds.
And I think we have some questions towards the back, but I'll ask one as we work our way back there. We have a great supporter in Washington Trust, so it seems like the time to ask the question. What role do you see the traditional financial institutions, Steve, playing in the future of fintech, and how can they effectively collaborate with startups?
That's a great question. I think there is a a critical role to play with from and through traditional banking, particularly on the corporate side, on the B2B side. I mean, on the consumer side, there are some people who may never step into a branch anymore. Understandably, they can do a lot of things digitally. But on the corporate side, you have to have the banking. That said, and the services, the breadth of services that are needed, particularly in larger corporates for financing, debt side, but also just all of the kind of treasury operations that are required. And that said, technology has to be tech forward. And so financial institutions need to make and continue, and they do, investments in technology. In recognizing the importance and the value of what they can provide their corporate customers over time. And then relative to fintechs, or smaller fintechs, again, I'm encouraged by how much larger, more traditional banks want to understand and work with fintechs and see how they might fit that in. I think I don't want to speak for the whole industry, but recognizing that while they have a very deep and strong investment and need to invest in technology internally, that partnering with fintechs is a way to help enhance that as well.
Hi, Steve. My name is Habib. I teach entrepreneurship here at Eastern. I wish I had an hour with you to pick your brain, but I obviously don't have that time. Great presentation. Touched on some of the most important things I think that are relevant to us as business educators and students that are here present. I have three questions, a question which is threefold that I wanted to ask you. One of the things that you said that it's crucially important for us to have trust. So I study, in terms of my research, I study institutional failure. So we are seeing a lack of trust in institutions across the board. And there's evidence to suggest that a lot of these institutions are failing in terms of garnering trust from people. So how do you, as a company, navigate where there's declining trust in all institutions? That's one fold. The second question is, you see this global trend in sort of like turmoil in terms of currency exchange, trade. The next bill that is coming up is talking about, the Congress is talking about retaliatory taxing. How do you perceive that is going to affect the way that you do business? And the third question is related to sort of, not related to those set of questions, it is kind of tangential about AI. So what we've seen is a lot of companies are using their own generative model as opposed to using agent-based AIs. So where do you think your company is going? Are you going to try and develop in-house AI or use some from an agent-based model?
Thank you.
Thank you.
So in terms of declining trust, bigger picture, what I see is that I guess I'm fortunate because finance generally is, by definition, you have to have a high degree of trust inside that part of the organization. So we're fortunate. I often say that we get to work with really great people, in terms of what they're doing. But more broadly than that, I think a lot of that's driven by poor communication, or actions don't match commitments, or don't follow up. People aren't doing that, or there's just a declining level of trust overall in certain areas like that. I guess we try to, at least Treasury4, do our part to try to be a good partner, and that's what our customers tell us, that we have good retention rates because we try to do the right thing, admit when we're wrong in that. I do think that trust it has declined a lot, but in confidence in organizations, in all types, it's certainly under a lot of pressure, but I do think that it's up to individuals personally. I just think you have to conduct yourself and how you do that, and hopefully carry that forward. And I also would say, globally, having around the world, it's just so great to work with people around the world when you can find connections and reason to be working together, and we are more global, so I think just making the effort individually and personally is a big part of what I try to do. And leading to the next question, really around volatility, with an uncertainty is a big challenge inside organizations, because things are changing quickly, and not just rates, but tariffs or taxation. And so some of that uncertainty can't be. One way you can deal with some uncertainty is hedging, what's called hedging. You can hedge commodities prices, crop prices, oil, foreign exchange rates by putting in, and I won't get too technical, but forward contracts, and you do things to offset the financial uncertainty surrounding that kind of volatility. But certain volatility is coming in right now. It's just so unexpected, it kind of blows the model out. So I would say that's more challenging right now. There's no easy answer to that. Within the finance organization, there's a group called Financial Planning Analysis, or FP&A, the budgeting and forward looking. They have a tough job right now, because they're trying to figure out like what's your base case, what's your upside, downside, and a lot of contingency planning is really what needs to be done right now inside organizations, because, as you know, things are changing so quickly. And in terms of the impact of, the types of AI, I think you were talking about like internal models that aren't utilizing outside. We agree. We don't want to. We want to maintain the integrity of our code, integrity of that. So it's a lot more for us, and we're just dipping our toe in the water right now in terms of how to use that. For us, we're not building per se native AI as much as using AI-enabled tools in the business intelligence area in the database, and really allowing them to provide those types of technologies, and then testing that internally. Security and cybersecurity and safety are critical element in any company, any fintech, but particularly in the area of treasury technology, because of the sensitivity of the data.
Thanks for sharing your time with us, Steve. I appreciate it. I teach organizational leadership here at Eastern, and so I'm always curious about the leadership insights. And so my question for you is what's a leadership insight or lesson that you learned the really hard way that didn't have to be learned that way?
That's a great question. I would say, some of it's just interaction, but is to try to be present with people when you're working with them. That as good as we think we are at multitasking, you're not as good as you think you are, and people notice it. And so, that's just one element, is to really try to be present with people there, and really do that. It's something I learned along the way. It got back to kind of being a good listener. I think that's important. But I think the bigger picture with leadership is the importance of communication, and to not assume that everybody knows you might think you know what's going on because you're closest to it, the inner circle, but you need to communicate. And I'd say I could have learned that sooner, but I tried to do that. At Itron, 39 earnings releases, the first meeting I had after the earnings release was with our own team, because I figured they should be the first to know and really let people know. And once you consistently do that, people can handle good and bad news because you're being consistent with that. So I'd say my lesson would be to have learned, earlier in my career, to have learned that, and to have applied that sooner would have been more effective.
Thank you. One down front here, maybe.
So you have two co-founders, and you guys have been navigating what I cannot imagine are any more challenging economic times. You launched in the beginning of a pandemic. You navigated through wildly up and down financial markets. What are the tools and tricks that you guys use to communicate, to stay on the same page? Because I'm sure there's times where you've had different opinions on how to proceed and how to move forward. How do you maintain that connection, candor, and just unity so that you can move forward as an entity?
That's a great question too. It's technology-wise, we've all heard about how COVID pulled technology adoption forward probably 3 to 5 years. It's just absolutely true. At first for me, it was just Zoom, and now we use Teams. We use Slack because we work with another firm that's Slack messaging. These are just the collaboration tools that are in place. They're just well accepted now. Now I wouldn't, I mean, in a long time ago, I'd have to get on a plane from London to go to a country for a 2-hour meeting. You just wouldn't do that now because even the customer's not there. We've won deals where we've never met the customer in person. One person's in Dublin, one's in London, somewhere else. And so the technology is a great enabler, but that's on the tech side. I'd say more important is the intentionality of communication to have our periodic meetings and have people really feeling like they're part of that. And we've mixed a couple things. We're hybrid here. We're a few days in the office, some out. I'm always in the office, but relative to those who are outside of Spokane, at least once a year, bringing everybody together. And I think those are the kind of tools, and I share a story where two individuals that really built a great relationship, all remotely in teams. And I remember the first time the person arrived for our quarterly meeting or that update, and they're almost in tears, like meeting each other in person. So, because they'd known each other, but they hadn't. Like, I didn't know you were that tall. So it was really cool. So I think it's about finding the right mix for the organization and communicating. But absolutely, over those years, I mean, the first formation of Treasury4 was all remote with Ed and Nathan and me. And from my house, and vice versa, and then we started bringing everyone together. Yeah, it's a really good question.
Well, I can at least finish with one more. Are there any common misconceptions about fintech, and how do we dispel them?
That's a great question too. I would say that there are a lot of fintech companies out there doing different things, and that in many areas, and a lot of innovations. And I would say personally that to have to go into customers with the right attitude. You're not there because they're doing things that are wrong. We're tool providers. I mean, we're providing a technology. It's the users that make the tool powerful. And I remember, it reminds me of something someone once said, which is, I always knew I could save my company money. Your tool helps me prove that. And I thought, that's the attitude I want to capture. Not that you're doing something wrong, but if you have the right technology to do something better, we can help you. And I think that fintechs that go in with, I don't say arrogance or anything, it's like, oh, it's all broken. I just think that's the wrong attitude. I think it's to go in and work and provide and to be there to help them be successful, and recognize that it's the technology itself will help them, but they're the ones that are going to make it successful, and to go in with that right attitude is the right way to do it, and not, I think, if you don't do that way, I think you just run the risk that you're not approaching the market in the right way as a company.
Wonderful. Last call for questions before we get into the networking, which is obviously very important. Good?
Thank you.
All right. I think Dr. Davari is in the back with a little gift.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.